Hey gang, Julia Usher here. Welcome to my first competition Q&A and gold sponsor spotlight of the 2025 competition season. Today I am speaking with Beatriz Muller of Gingerneers. She is one of our premier gold sponsors and also a judge of the competition. But before I introduce Beatriz, I just want to briefly back up and give you a quick overview of my competition for those of you who are not familiar with it. Let me move on to the next slide. My competition is running online again this year. It's run online for the last few years. And the good news about that is it means it's open to anyone, anywhere in the world, from beginner to advanced decorator. We have categories for both beginner and intermediate decorators, as well as advanced and master decorators. So it's a great way to get your foot in the door if you're new to competitions. We also have two different cookie categories that entries get submitted into: a 2D or flat cookie category, which is what you might be most familiar with. We also have a 3D cookie category, which involves constructed cookies. We'll be talking about the latter a fair bit today because Beatriz is our expert judge on the matter of all things 3D. She'll be talking a lot about her business, what she does, and how that makes her sort of ideally suited for judging the 3D category of our competition. The competition does involve a $15 USD registration fee. This is a small fee that goes towards covering things like graphics and other ancillary expenses involved with pulling off the competition. We encourage you to register early, and I'll talk about that towards the end of the presentation. There are lots of advantages to registering early. With my competition, it's unlike some other online competitions where you submit previous work. In my competition, everything needs to be freshly generated for the competition and must fit the year's theme for the competition. This year, it's Nature's Symphony, kind of a conglomeration of nature and music. That's why we have all the butterflies and animals and things that you'll see on the slides throughout this presentation. Anyway, your entries would need to be constructed to conform to that theme. There are a number of other judging criteria that we use as well. I should point out that all of the rules for the competition posted to my site Cookie Connection back on February 28th. Cookie Connection is the home base for the competition. So if you want to see the rules, if you want to get the registration link, all you have to do is go to Cookie Connection, look under the competition section of my blog, and look at the competition overview post, and you'll find all of this in great detail. I will also be posting a link to the competition overview underneath this video when it posts online. Again, register early. There are lots of advantages to doing that, and I'll discuss those at the end of the presentation. The other great thing to know is you have plenty of time to create. Though you're creating something new, you've got a good 3 months to do that. Entries are not due until May 31st. Now, because the competition is online, how do you submit entries? Basically, you're going to be required to take some photographs, including work in process photographs of your entry, and also do a short video. Those things document your entry from various angles and whatnot, and then they get uploaded to secure databases on Cookie Connection. So while you're making a physical entry, the judges will be reviewing your photos and video, as well as some descriptions you provide about your entry. So that's a little bit about the competition. And again, I really refer you off to the competition overview on Cookie Connection for more details, or to email me if any of that is unclear. Why compete? Why even do it in the first place? It sounds high stress. Some people are intimidated by that. I actually think it's one of the greatest ways to learn and grow. And my online competition is particularly low risk because it is online. You can submit your entry, all photographs and video, without anyone ever knowing other than the judges. If you win, of course, we'll publicize a photograph of your entry, but it's not the same as like putting yourself out there on a competition table in the middle of a physical competition. So if you're at all nervous about that, don't be. It's a great way to learn and grow, and how you learn and grow is by pushing yourself as you make your entry to conform to this theme. But also you learn and grow through the feedback that our judges provide. One of the things I've heard most about my competition, if I can be so humble, is that it really provides the best feedback out there. What we do at the conclusion of the competition, if you request feedback, is that we will provide a summary of your numerical scores as compared to the average for your cookie category. If you've entered 2D, you'll get the average of the 2D category. If you've entered 3D, you'll see the average of all scores across the 3D category in your skill level classification. So that gives you a pretty clear picture in a quantitative way of where you did really well and where you might have areas to improve. But more importantly, our judges provide a ton of qualitative feedback. At the end of the process, I'll gather all the inputs from Beatriz and our 4 other judges and collect them into a document that explains your scores, basically. They'll explain why you did well on certain things and where, why it was that you didn't score as highly on other things. But beyond that, they also explain how you might do better. So it doesn't stop with where you might improve. It often provides lessons or tips for how to improve. That said, while learning and growth are paramount to my competition, I truly believe that, we also offer some of the best prizes in the industry, which brings me to my next slide. You may have seen some of my announcements last week that had the prize tally at $13,000. I'm in the midst of the sponsorship drive as we speak, so this number is constantly changing. A couple days later, it's now close to 15,000. I've got another 2 to 3 weeks to gather sponsors, so I expect that number to grow. But that represents pretty sizable benefit to competitors as well. We award 12 prizes, a first, second, and third in the 2D beginner intermediate, a first, second, and third in the 2D advanced master, first, second, and third in the 2D or 3D rather, beginner intermediate, and a first, second, and third in the 3D advanced master. So there are 4 categories, 3 prize levels in each. So that just gets divvied up across 12 people, which is pretty cool. I have some wonderful sponsors to thank for that, and I'll be doing proper announcements of all of them as we move forward. But today I'm just going to be focusing on one of those special sponsors, and that's Beatriz Muller, as I said, of Gingerneers. She was one of our early sponsors to sign up. She also has had a long and involved history with my competition, having won the 3D cookie category. Hi, Beatriz. In 2021 with this gorgeous 3D mixer. And she's been judging the competition ever since. She is really our 3D expert on the panel. I tend to organize the panel such that it has expertise represented from a broad array, across the broad array of cookie decorating. So we have painting experts, we have piping experts, we have 3D experts, and so on. Anyway, I'm going to be quiet now and just welcome Beatriz. She is, as I said, a gold sponsor, and her business name is Gingerneers. She's going to talk a little bit about what she does and also about the prizes she's offering in the competition.
Oh, hi. Good morning, Julia.
Good morning.
We have a beautiful day here today in Canada, so hopefully you have it too.
Yeah, it's actually finally spring here. Yay. So I'm happy about that.
Finally, yeah, we have a very, very long winter this year. Yeah. So a little bit about myself. I've been making cookies and cakes and running my cake business for many years. That was my primary business. But about 12 years ago, I made my first really big gingerbread house. And I took it to the National Gingerbread House competition in Asheville in North Carolina. And that piece made a big impact. And basically, that's when Gingerneer was born. At the time, what happened, I guess, that at the time, because I had a very different style from the traditional North American gingerbread houses, I guess it led my pieces being noticed by the companies looking for unique gingerbread displays, right? I also have a very strong passion for architecture, which makes it easy for me to replicate buildings and facades, something that companies are looking for, right, for their displays. I guess I consider myself fortunate to have turned my passion for the sugar arts and the 3D cookie building into a successful business. there are really not many cookie or gingerbread artists who create the 3D buildings for corporate orders. Uh, I guess I really believe there is a strong market for 3D cookie art. Um, it is seasonal, unfortunately, it's not year round. But like cookiers that really want to start into the 3D building, they can really be sure there is actually a strong market for these unique creations, right? So yeah, it's I guess the 3D cookie building entails a lot of skills that a lot of people may not have. That's why in my like uh, uh, when I teach this the 3D cookie, it always brings. mm Okay, so I designed the pieces always with the okay. So sorry, I blank out here, so I may have to. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Can I ask you a question while you're thinking? So,
Yes,
so,
yes, yes, yes.
so I've been scrolling through your work here just to show people examples of some of the stuff. This is just work you've done in the last year, some for TV, as we're looking at, and some for corporate clients. Can you so
Oh,
you
yes, yeah.
so you do a lot of obviously larger 3D projects for corporations. You also mentioned you teach. Can you explain a little bit about how you separate your time? When do you teach? When do you do the corporate work? Is
Oh,
that the
yeah.
full balance of what you do, or are you doing other things as well?
And I actually, so basically, I teach during most of the year, and around September, that's when I start the gingerbread season, as I call it, which is basically. But by then, I do have all the inquiries, the back and forth. When you deal with the corporate orders, they are usually showpieces, and you have to go for months because it's not an easy process. I say I want to build this. They have to make sure that whatever you build in presents their company. They have a special request. So you have to go back and forth so many times. Sometimes it takes months.
Mm-hmm.
One of the orders last year, the whole process started in May, right? To be finalized in October. So that is a long process because they have very particular requests, right? That you
Mm-hmm.
have to follow. Also, usually they want a replica of their buildings, right? Or a replica with artistic interpretation, and the artistic interpretation usually they provide that artistic interpretation,
Interesting.
right?
Yeah.
So you have, it's not that I come up with the idea. Sometimes they give me they tell me, do whatever you feel, or give us different ideas. So I have to draw several ideas and it goes to them. Then they choose one. Sometimes they actually want to see a piece, so I have to make a gingerbread, not the piece, the whole piece, but just one cookie, and maybe pipe or paint whatever they want to see, so they have a visual, because unfortunately most companies cannot visualize what I'm trying to tell them. So it has,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I have to actually put it in a cookie so they see it, right?
So,
So
so let me ask you this. So, for the people that are listening that are interested in how you've structured your business and are in the process of maybe structuring their own businesses in cookie decorating, why is it that you chose to do primarily corporate work as opposed to serving, retail cookie orders, doing sets and things like that, as many people do? What are the advantages, I guess, is the question, to doing this kind of work for you personally?
Well, I noticed, like I used to do cookies when I was making cakes in the past. Um, Cookies does not, it's a lot of work. It does not really make you any money, right? Like it is beautiful. I still actually do it because I want to kind of keep the skills, not because there is a financial incentive behind it, but it's an artistic incentive behind it to keep up my skills, sometimes try new things that I see. Like 2D cookiers, they come up with incredible ideas, and I say, "Oh, I want to try that." So I will do it for fun, and sometimes I will make an order here and there.
Hmm.
But 3D cookie building, and I say 3D cookie because I not only use gingerbread, but I use honey recipes, just plain vanilla recipes. So there's several recipes I use. It depends on for what I want to make,
Hmm.
right? Honey cookies usually are, I color them, and that's why you see so many blue buildings.
Yeah,
And
let me pull that up.
yeah, so the blue buildings are actually, those are requests.
I think this is
I
the one.
always told my, yeah, like this one for Harry Winston. This was actually 3 feet tall. It was a really big building. The reason, because they actually hang, they have some jewelry they were introducing some jewelry that they were going to hang in the windows there, right? So
Oh, in the windows in the gingerbread.
yeah, like in the
Oh,
windows,
cute.
yeah. So in the bottom windows, so the top is a replica of their building in New York. The whole thing is a replica, but it has like the decorations. They actually provided them. They have a creative team, and they gave me a few ideas. I said, okay, I guess I'm going to try this. So I actually had to pipe. It was on a board.
Hmm.
There's these details, and then they chose the one that they like best. But
Hmm.
they applied these ideas. I didn't. The only thing I did pipe the doorway, which is their iron gate.
Beautiful.
And I did replicate with a little bit of creative details, right? That the door doesn't have that, but it kind of enhanced the design,
Yeah,
right?
so
So
pretty. So, if
yeah,
I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that the advantages are it's lucrative work. It's and part of that is also because you have it's lucrative work, and there's probably a convenience factor of working on fewer bigger orders as opposed to many small orders. Um,
yeah, yeah. So they are very time consuming. I have enough experience that I can, right away look at the picture, look at the idea, and I say it's going to take me 70 hours, 100 hours, and I quote on based on that, and then we go from there. So
Interesting.
this is an artistic, this is art. It's just edible art, and
Mhm.
it is made like edible art. It's not just a cookie. Like with cookies, you have some design that takes so long, right? They are beautiful, but a lot of people are expecting to pay what they will pay in a bakery, right? Just a cookie in a bakery. So this is when it comes to the financial incentive, definitely you should go into 3D cookie, because that's where you make really good
I
money,
mean, the
right?
other thing is there aren't too many people doing it. So as a marketplace, it's pretty wide open. You might be one of few in North America that's really serving uh, corporate customers in this way. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I think there is a few
Hmm.
people that I personally know that in the US that are making these pieces, like corporate pieces.
Mm-hmm.
They it's here in Canada. I think I'm the only one, but most of I get called from everywhere. Like the one in when I called last year, it was a last minute thing, so we worked like crazy, my team and I, to finish the preliminary work and fly to Disneyland in
Michelle.
LA. That is yeah, the Disney. So they were looking for basically reinvent the castle, the Sleeping Beauty castle, reinvent it into a gingerbread masterpiece, right? So it was for their own advertising. So I flew with most of the pieces done, like everything baked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pack it all, suitcase, flew there,
Mm-hmm.
and they film it. I went to their Disney film station place, and they filmed the whole process of me putting it
How
together.
fun. Yeah. And here it
So
is, right pictured here, correct? Yeah, that's
yes,
fantastic.
it was a very long day. So I put it together in one day. So I had to build it. When you build 3D pieces, usually you have to wait a few hours before you continue gluing, because otherwise it can move, and it shifts, right?
Mm-hmm.
This shifts. I do use royal icing for that. I think it's the best because it allows me enough time to adjust the corners and basically that it doesn't get out of shape, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but you do have to wait. And so I designed this piece to interlock the pieces. So once they were interlocked, it didn't move, no matter if the icing was dry or
Got it.
not. So I could keep building even if it was everything wet, right?
Okay. So another
Yeah.
question. So your work here is obviously like super impressive and elaborate. And as people are watching this video, they might think, oh my God, I could never do that for Julie's competition, or I could never even, I'm not even sure how I would do that for my own business. My question to you is, how did you go about learning these skills, and what would you recommend to people that are trying to learn these skills, either for developing a new sector of their business, either for going after the corporate sector or for entering my competition?
Um, well, you will start small, right? You don't start with this. I think I always tell everybody first of all, use a graph paper to draw your design. It will help immensely with proportion, because most people have a hard time how to proportion this, like a building or a piece. It doesn't have to be a building, like it's just any piece that you do. Maybe if you want to do a 3D monkey, let's say, out of a cookie, and then your head is humongous or too small compared to the body, right? So basically draw it and use graph paper, because it helps you with that.
Mm-hmm.
For a little more complex build, even if it's not really complex, but you do have a vision, and you see the front. But when you draw it, you see it in a piece of paper, right? You see the front, but you can't visualize sometimes how to go about the back or the size of a 3D piece. So build the front with the cardboard foam, and then starts continue building it. And as you glue it together with the using the hot glue gun or pins, then you can adjust your pieces, because you know that, okay, this is too long, this is too short, this is too wide, and then you have a visual. The whole point is to have a visual. You should do that with cardboard or anything before you start actually baking the cookies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're gonna have such a headache, and it's working with cookies is not really that easy as it is with
Mm-hmm.
cardboard.
That's a good
So
tip. So
yeah,
I'm gonna back up, if it's all right, and have you talk a little bit about the prizes you're offering to winners of my competition, because they relate to your classes. I'd like you to talk a little bit about the classes you conduct as well, because they're a great resource for those that want to build these skills too, I think. So I'm going to just flip to that slide and have you talk not only about the prizes you're giving out, but your classes in general.
Yeah, so the class will cover fundamental 3D construction techniques for working with gingerbread, like honey and other cookie doughs, and so the and also I will emphasize how to fix or how to yeah, I would say fix my own recipes or any other recipe that people around the world use, right? Because for instance, if you follow my recipe, other countries have different flours, have different sugars, so it
Right.
will influence how it is done. And this is a big issue that a lot of people are asking me. How do I do this? It doesn't work. Your surface are so smooth, but then mine are cracking, right? Or they are not staying together, and it usually has to do with the quality of the flour, the type of sugar they use. Like it's nothing they can do because that's what they can get in their countries, right? So I help with that because I actually have enough experience talking with people around the world that
Mm-hmm.
I have notes. Okay, so this person from like France has this issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I will help with that too. So the class will be focused on how to design the 3D pieces, mostly proportional sketching because that is very very important. How to create the templates and how and like what kind I use paper. Like a lot of people use cardboard, but I think it's marks the when you put cardboard or anything too thick on top of your dough, it marks it. It
Mm-hmm.
has, so I don't like that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
then I'm, OCD, so that's a different story. So the class will again the recipes tailored for 3D construction, the how to shape and bake shape and curved cookies with different recipes because that is also important, especially if you want to use a color like
Mm-hmm.
build. Then like royalizing for sealing, gluing, covering. Like my pieces, I work with brushes. So the royalizing, I will basically shows. I will show the consistencies to brush. Use the palette knives, and I use a lot of techniques that are used for clay pottery.
Mm-hmm.
So and royalizing techniques will be geared towards that, not so
Mm-hmm.
much as flooding, like a
Mm-hmm.
cookier knows flood. I would think, right?
Okay, so
So
so just to summarize, I love these prizes, and and sh Beatrice has been so generous to give out 2 classes, so it's not just one. She's going to be giving a class that's worth $1,000 in value to the winner, the first place winner of the Advanced Master 3D Cookie category, and also a class worth $500 in value to the winner of the 2D cookie category. So I think I've got that correct. At any rate, wonderful prizes that it sounds like are going to cover the A to Z of building a gingerbread structure, from design, which is so important, through to construction, reinforcing the panels, through to some basic decorating, with the focus being on techniques for decorating that aren't necessarily conventionally done with 2D cookies. Is that correct?
that is that is exactly it. The I won't get into any 2D cookie unless the person asks. Usually
Mm-hmm.
in the one-on-one classes, which are these are,
Yeah, that's
if
great.
this if the person asks for royalizing, like piping techniques and things like that, I totally will go to it. Um, I but it's not the focus. So the focus will be like construction techniques, like anything. Uh, how to create edible posts and beams and supports
Oh, yeah.
for bigger fields, uh, overhanging techniques, curved structures,
Wow.
cantilever techniques, interlocking techniques. It's gonna be highly focused on that, right?
Yeah, and again, these are one-on-one classes, guys. So you get custom tailored attention from this expert here. They're fantastic. Um,
Yeah.
I'm going to move on. Oh, before I move on, if people aren't entering my competition and just want to take advantage of your classes whenever, how would they do that?
So yes, that's important. So the classes, it will be, for unfortunately has to be next year, from January until September, August, because after that I'm super busy with my gingerbread season starts, so I don't really have time. So it will be next year. By the time the competition is done, I kind of already moving into this following season in sketching and working with people back and forth. And I also am busy with my classes because that's where in summer is very busy. So unfortunately, you're going to have to wait until next year, January, and from January to August.
So if somebody wants to book a class with you, even if they don't, even if they don't win one of our prizes, if they want to book a class with you, they just email you, or how do they reach you?
Yeah. So it's I don't ever advertise my classes because I get overwhelmed by the requests.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's also the other reason is you need the minimum days are 3 days.
Okay.
That is the smallest project.
Okay.
And like if you do it online, you will do a lot of at home. We kind of, I do the project with you, uh, and you kind of follow me, and then you do homework, and then the following day you ask the questions where you have difficulties, and then we continue like that. And it also gives time for drawing a time. And and that is actually one of the reasons, right? A lot of projects you have, a lot of what you've seen there, in my examples, they are minimum 70 hours work.
Yeah, they're
Those,
significant.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like a class for a more complex, for a for the master class 3D, it will be 5 days, 4 to 5 days that you have to do. So we are arrange. If it's online, we will agree on a date once a week, or sometimes it's every day. Depends on how the person works.
Okay.
And the personal classes, like hands-on, I never had more than 2 people or 3 at the same time,
Okay.
because it's very, very intensive, and I like to be there for everybody, right? The more people you have in the class, there's too much chatting, and nothing gets done.
Okay, well, I appreciate all your perspective on your business and both your corporate work and your classes and the prizes that you'll be offering in this competition. I want to turn now, because we're at the 35-minute mark, to some question and answers that we have for each other related to the competition. And just a note to everybody watching, you just saw a lot of Beatrice's 3D work, which is large scale, really time intensive, and very elaborate. That's not to suggest that we're expecting that caliber of work in the competition. It's presented so that you've got an expert person on the panel evaluating your pieces who's going to provide you with some pretty incredible feedback. We're going to turn now to the competition and kind of relate all that Beatriz does to that competition a little bit more directly through these Q&As, if that makes sense. Beatriz primed me with a couple of questions beforehand. And one was the first one, which is, how are 2D and 3D cookies even defined in my competition? What are they? Because we do have particular definitions. And then if you're new to 3D cookies, which many people happen to be, does the competition provide any resources to help entrants with their 3D cookie entries? So I'm going to try to answer the first two with some help from Beatriz, and then we're going to come back to questions 3 and 4, which are questions that I really have for her based on her experience with 3D cookies. What does she recommend to you folks as you approach your 3D entries, or your 2D ones for that matter? But first, the category definitions. I just want to pause on those briefly. These are the definitions of 2D cookie and 3D cookie for my competition. Again, if you go to the competition overview post on Cookie Connection, you'll find all the rules, including these definitions, in that post. So this is a direct excerpt from that blog post. I encourage you to read that from start to finish before you even start. But briefly, a 2D cookie in our competition is a flat cookie. For your entry, we require a single large cookie or any number of flat cookies beyond that. We have no maximum cookie count. However, we do require that the entire entry be at least 1 foot by 1 foot, which is 30 by 30 centimeters, and no bigger than 3 by 3 feet. So you could do a set that arranges to some, arranges well within that space between 1 foot and 3 feet. You could do one big, huge cookie. The cookies can be dimensional. Of course, you can pipe things that stand up. You can use pressure piping. You can add fondant embellishments. You can add piped royal icing embellishments that stand off the cookies. But the cookie structure itself is largely flat. It's not constructed. You're not piecing cookies together in the 2D category. Cookies can be arranged on easels or standing up. But again, the cookie itself isn't constructed, if that makes sense. Now, by contrast, the 3D cookie category involves a construction. That means putting cookies together into a freestanding piece. It doesn't have to be a house or an architectural element. And in fact, it probably won't be, given the theme of this competition, which is Nature's Symphony. We do require, however, that construction contain a minimum of 12 pieces in the construction itself. You can include more cookies in the entire entry, but at least 12 of them have to be constructed. The size requirements here are that the entry must fit within a 2 by 2 by 3 foot tall area. It can be smaller than that area, but it needs to fit in. So again, the pieces don't need to be monstrous, and many of Beatriz's pieces are much bigger than that. They can be quite small, but they do need to involve some constructing. The cookies themselves can be 2D, the ones that go into the construction. They can also be shaped and formed. They can be contoured, they can be molded. They can use some of the techniques that Beatriz talked about earlier. But again, it shouldn't be just a single flat cookie that has other dimensional decorations on top. Do you have anything to add, Beatriz, to that? Was that clear?
Yeah, no, that's pretty it.
Yeah, and if it's not clear, guys, when you get to that competition overview post on Cookie Connection, just post your questions underneath it. I encourage most of the comments to go there, so that way all entrants can kind of view the questions. We tend to get the same questions over and over, so it's helpful if I answer them in one place. Okay, so that's how we define things in our competition. You can enter one or both categories, and you can enter one or more times too. You don't have to just put in a single entry. If you want to do 2 entries in the 2D cookie category or 3 entries in the 3D cookie category, you're more than welcome. Each entry does bear a separate registration fee of $15, however. So oftentimes we'll have people entering both categories. Typically people don't enter too much more than that because they're putting a lot of time into these entries. Mm-hmm. Okay, back to the question about resources that Beatriz posed. This was a really good question she asked me a couple of days ago. One thing we've seen is that we typically don't get as many 3D cookie entrants as we do 2D cookie entrants. And I think that's in part because there just aren't too many people doing 3D cookies out there, or they might feel intimidated by the actual act of constructing these things. It's a little bit out of the norm. So she thought it would be helpful to pull together some resources for people as they approach their entries. Now, obviously, Beatriz has paid classes that she offers that could help you build skills in this area. I also have paid tutorials in this area to help you build skills in this area. However, we are not here to promote our businesses in that way. Since we're both judging the competition, we would rather be less engaged directly with helping you with your 3D entries. That would represent a bit of a conflict of interest. So what we've done here with these resources is we've compiled a bunch of free resources from the internet, from my site, things that I'm not directly involved with and don't benefit from, and some paid resources from other 3D experts out there into a 2-page document. There are a series of links that'll take you to different places to explore different things. Some things are informational on this list. Others are more food for thought. For instance, I linked to all of the 3D cookies that have ever been posted to my Cookie Connection site by members of the site. They represent 3D cookies from a broad spectrum of people, of many different skill levels. They're simply there as food for thought. Whereas Beatriz has provided links to a lot of informational resources. So I'm going to have her describe some of the things she's included in this list. Again, this list will be linked to in the recap post that includes this video, which you'll find on Cookie Connection under the competition section of the blog. So I'm going to turn it to Beatriz now to talk a little bit about some of the resources she provided for this list.
So most of the resources are basically gingerbread based, because those are the community. They actually build 3D projects. I think I believe one of the best ones. It's a blog that is called the Craft Grid. Who's written by a finalist in the Food Network Haunted Gingerbread Showdown, and she also competes at the National Gingerbread Competition. So she has gingerbread recipes, tips, projects, tutorials, a lot of tips in there. Go to Facebook groups. Two of the best, in my opinion, are one is called Ginger Friends, and the other one is called Gingerbread Tips and Tricks. There's tons. Unfortunately, you're going to have to scroll down here. And when you do that, focus on the months leading to the National Gingerbread Competition in Nashville, because that's where you have tons of questions from people from all over, and the answers below.
When is that competition usually, Beatriz? What time of year?
It's in Asheville, North Carolina, and it's
in the fall.
It's every. Sorry.
What time of year is it held?
It's in November.
Okay.
Usually it's the third week of November, but it's actually right after your Thanksgiving. Okay. Right before. No, after. Sorry, before your Thanksgiving. They kick up basically the Omni Grove kicks up the holiday season for their business, right? So, and they have they display this all these incredible, because you have to see incredible 3D bills. They display them through the whole November, and November, December, until January. Yes.
So your advice in that particular group is to scroll down around that November timeframe when people are prepping for that event, because there are a lot of tips and tricks that are shared.
That's correct. So start in scrolling around. I would say September. That's when the questions start. Like this community, they will tell you they start preparing in January. They start growing their ideas in January. So,
Mhm.
but then they don't really. A lot of people do, but most they like in September they start asking questions. How do you do this? I have this issue. Something happened. Like the so you scroll down. Unfortunately, like Facebook, like the walls, you have to follow it, and you scroll in like forever there. But
And well, of
the
course, they could also start their own threads, though. They can go into that group and ask questions of those experts there, even about their entry, and probably get some useful
yes,
tips. So, yeah.
that's correct. That's and it's now the only issue that they may have, it depends on the recipe they use, right? So most of gingerbread builders, they use construction gingerbread. So like if you are from another country that never used that, you may have to learn to new techniques and how to work with it, which is totally different. So, but in my opinion, you can build with anything.
Mhm.
You don't have to follow these construction gingerbread recipes. So you can build with anything.
Right. And I should say for our competition, that's perfectly fine. I have a resource link that I added in my section to this same document. That's a link to one of my free YouTube tutorials that talks about how to adapt different doughs for shaping them, in particular for making contoured cookies. So that's a good one to look at. If somebody wants to use a sugar cookie recipe there, I actually go in that video, adapt my sugar cookie recipe so it works well over curved surfaces without cracking. So yeah, people needn't, for my competition, feel confined to a particular dough. And there are tips in this document for how you can adapt your dough. So
Yeah, that is that's very, very important information. um, I guess, well, I also provide tips. I have a tip sheet that I send to magazines every year and blogs. So that's going to be also posted on Julia's website. So you can read over. I think these are very, very important. Those tips for building a very sturdy 3D cookie or gingerbread designs. You can use gingerbread or any other cookie. So
yeah, that tip
the
sheet, just so you know, that tip sheet appears as a link in this larger 3D resource handout. So when you click on it, it'll open up a PDF that Beatrice has created. I read it last night. It's super helpful, guys. It has everything from, again, a lot of this stuff, it sounds like you cover in your classes, but it's summarized in a 2 to 3 page document. So it's like everything from templating to assembly tricks. It's really, really quite helpful. Also, thoughts about internal structures and things like that. So we're going to talk about internal structures a bit in a second, I think. So
yeah.
that particular Beatrice's tip sheet, again, these are all free resources she's offering in this document. It's super helpful.
Yeah. So it's yeah, it's like there are I think one of the most important tips there is how to flatten your pieces.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because and the other when you bake, there it doesn't matter, even if in construction it shifts and it moves and it buff, or like it puffs up somehow. So
Mm-hmm.
you in 3D construction you have to be extremely accurate for the piece to look good, and you really need to flatten it. So a heavy object on top of the cookie right as it come out of the oven, that's the best trick. Once it cools, that cookie never moves, right? So it is
Yeah, there's so many nuggets like that in her tip sheet. So I really encourage you guys to look at it. It's pretty incredible. So many of those things I learned by trial and error over many years. I wish I had had that tip sheet at the time.
at the
Well,
time. Mm.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the resources I included. I have 3 different sections at the bottom of this document. All the stuff at the top are resources that Beatrice directly contributed. I have a section that's all my free tutorials. So I have a link to my 3D cookie playlist on YouTube. It just shows all of the 3D cookie projects that I've created a tutorial for. They're very project-based, but you'll see different techniques repeated over and over again if you watch through them. I also isolated a couple of videos that I thought would be helpful that are purely technique-based. One is the one I mentioned about how to modify your dough, whatever it happens to be, for 3D baking. Another one is how to contour or shape cookie dough once it's been modified. And then I have a couple of videos in there for how to decorate them. One that shows an interesting stenciling technique on curved cookies. It's really hard to stencil on a curved cookie because stencils want to not go curvy. They want to stay flat. So this video explores how you might do that. Stenciling is a really cool way to add quick decoration to a curved cookie without having to pipe. And so there are a couple other things like that in there. And then the final sections are mostly resources from my site, Cookie Connection. Again, Cookie Connection is the home base for this competition, but it's my community-based website where a whole bunch of other stuff goes on every day. We have people writing tutorials there on a monthly basis. So some of these links are to those tutorials. I have 2 tutorial writers, Manu Pezupane and Aproned Artist, who from time to time do 3D cookies and explore techniques there. They tend to be much smaller scale, which are appropriate for this competition. And they tend to focus on different things. So Aproned Artist will do more shaped cookies, but very, very tiny ones. Manu will do larger 3D constructions, but primarily composed of 2D cookies. So they're there just, again, as food for thought more than anything else. I think that covers it. There's a lot in there, so I encourage you guys, once this gets posted on Cookie Connection, to just like download it and look at it. And I thank Beatriz for recommending we do this, because I think it's a really valuable resource.
Yeah, I think you know what I forgot to add in my tips sheet, that if you're going to flood the cookie before putting it together, make sure that it is one cookie or one facade, I would say, that it doesn't interfere with the construction itself, because the moment you add icing, it will not fit into your overall design anymore. So this is keep that in mind. I totally forgot that in adding it into my tips sheet.
And then by that you mean is this what you mean? Like when, because I have a video, for instance, about icing contoured cookies. I often ice my cookies before I put them together.
Yes.
But
yes.
The icing adds depth, and so if you're fitting 2 panels together at a corner, you might have a bigger gap because you suddenly have icing on the cookies that you didn't have before. So you might have to fill that gap in a different way. It might be bigger. That might be okay, but just be aware
it's
of it.
not so much of 2 cookies together. Like say, even if you meter the corners, the icing on the outside would not really affect it. The problem comes when there is a third or a fourth or a fifth cookie that you want to put against it. Your whole you have maybe 2 inches, right? That it should fit within. It should fit there, but then you have a 1/4 inch of icing or whatever, and then the cookie will not fit, right? So all those things have to be a lot of, when I flood my cookies, when the piece is flatter, it's flatter when it's done. Unfortunately, you have to lay it on the side and wait for dry. Okay. But it's and that's one way of having no seams too, when you flood all of it when it's all done, right? But I think just flooding, the normal flooding, which is thick, that is, pay attention to that. A third or a fourth piece that you want to glue adjacent to that would not fit, right? So
got it. Okay. Good tips and watch outs. I'm going to go back to this Q&A slide and ask Beatriz a few more questions. In the last, we're now about 55 minutes into our video, so we'll wrap up here shortly. But I wanted to give her the opportunity to provide kind of her top few tips for entrants, whether they're entering the 3D category or some other category. What should they bear in mind? And then I if she has other questions to add at the end, we'll address those as well.
Yeah, so basically, for 2D, like it's that is a design that you pipe, paint, and you decorate on a flat cookie. So that is there's not really any construction techniques that you need or things that you have to think over. It's just, I think, for the 2D cookie, think when the way you lay them out on your board. That that is your board complements the cookie design. That is visually important, I think, as a judge, right?
Yeah.
It's yeah, because it's I don't know. It's visually important. It means that you thought uh, all the angles, how to decorate not only the cookie but how to decorate the board.
Yeah, I would add
And
to that too, because they have to create to our theme. It's really nice. I think our judges tend to prefer to see a relationship among the cookies as opposed to just like sitting, 12 different cookies separated on the baseboard. That we want them to relate to one another, tell a story that ties back to the theme. So think about the
yeah,
relationships among them too. That's all. Okay.
that's good. That is so true. And for the 3D, if you're going to be, I think it's very important, if you're going to need some type of support, please use thick pasta, cinnamon sticks, anything that is edible. Don't use wooden dowels or sticks for that, even if they're visible. It's just represents an edible piece better, in that way. Yeah, and also, this is a beautiful theme. This competition theme is unbelievable. Not only very creative, the things that you can do, but when it comes to 3D, please, uh, think of something else than tree stumps, because I'm just this is very common. Tree stumps are, like garden tree stumps design with birds and stuff like that. It's really, really common. So think outside the box. It doesn't have to represent nature like realistically, right? You can use an abstract design. You can that represents nature in a way, in an abstract way. So it's a little more challenging maybe for a 3D, but there's so many different I would say ideas that you can use, right?
Yeah, and the competition overview post on Cookie Connection, the theme is named Nature Symphony, but I also have a paragraph there that kind of elaborates on what we mean by it. And I encourage you to read that to people, because that'll maybe stimulate some additional thinking about what you might represent. But as Beatriz said, you could be very representational. You could try to replicate nature. You could be as abstract as you want to be. And there's this symphony element to the theme too, which brings in kind of an interesting interplay potentially with music and nature. So
and yeah. So yeah, like I guess if there is a tree stump, just put a lot of other things around it, right?
yeah, I think when we also listed in the competition overview are the judging criteria we use. And one of the things we do judge is your interpretation of themes. So just remember that the more original it is, in all likelihood, the more points you'll score. If we're seeing a theme that repeats over, somebody's interpretation of theme that repeats over and over, that just
I mentioned it because even like in the cake world, right? When there is anything nature, there's always a tree stump. So
Yeah, I think I've judged a few tree stumps in my lifetime. So,
It's, well, anyways, it's okay. Like you can still do a tree stump, but very creative way. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so anyway, but on the note of judging criteria, theme is just one of them. In the 3D category, we have 9 judging criteria. They relate to how the piece looks from all angles. So that gets to some of Beatrice's points earlier on about mocking it up, not just from the front, but from the back before you start, because
yes.
we'll be looking at it from all angles in the video you submit. But there are 9 criteria there. There's 7 for 2D, simply because we don't have the viewability, the 360-degree viewability aspect on those 2D pieces. But you should read
Yeah,
those first before you start to create too, because they'll give you a
like
guideline of what the judges are looking for.
like
So
it's
Beatrice, did you have other questions? Sorry, I keep interrupting.
no, it's just like if you're going to use a lot of 2D cookie to build your design, your 3D design, it would be try to meter your corners. That looks so much better, right? Like in the finished product, because
And
when
why don't you define that? Because some people may not be familiar with what you mean by mitering the corners.
you bevel your corners. I use just a craft knife because my cookies are soft, right? So I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
You just bevel it in a 45 angle or even more if possible, and the reason is because there's more icing that fits into that corner, and the more icing there is more less likely will fall apart, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
the angle should be 45 and
Mm-hmm.
lower than that, the angle,
Mm-hmm.
and sharp as much as you can, so you don't have to cover the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And the most of the 3D pieces, when you don't have if you have um, let's say if it's contoured or shaped, those, it doesn't really matter there. But even in those pieces, if you have a round shape ball, let's say, and then you want to make a ball and glue on the other half, you kind of have to meter or angle the joints, so you not only you have space for the icing, but also it doesn't, sometimes it's still bulky and it doesn't join properly. So this is very important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
These are key things that you have to look, that judges look into that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it,
So my biggest tips here, I'm going to add a couple, are just read the rules from start to finish. They're not intended to intimidate. They appear long, but they're not intended to intimidate. They're intended to be there to provide some structure that you can grab onto and to create a common set of rules so that we have a level playing field when we judge entries, to make the process fairer. So read
Mhm.
everything first. I encourage you also to register early. I'm going to be touching on that again at the end. And I encourage you to register early because it's that payment of the $15 reg fee that opens up the entry databases to you. You'll get access to them and you can get into them and explore them and see exactly what you have to upload. I also have a link at the bottom of the competition overview post that describes what you have to upload, but I think it's better to get in there and walk around digitally the database and just see how it works, even before you start designing, to make sure that you don't miss anything that we require at final entry point. And then, last tip is just have fun with it. It's not so much whether you win or lose. Again, our objectives here are just to help people learn and grow. So have fun with
Yeah,
it, test your limits, try new things. And I think, at the end of the day, you're just going to be thrilled with what you were able to do, whether you win or lose. And it's just that process of self-exploration and growth that I think, at least for me, is pretty thrilling. So,
yeah, yeah. Basically, it's about learning, right? And
mhm,
and that's the reason why most people enter competition is to push yourself, and you have a commitment. That I think that's the
right.
way, right?
Mm-hmm.
You commit yourself to learning something new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's nice to have that structure of a competition to make that commitment. I don't know how,
Yeah,
if people are like me, but it's easy for me to say, oh, I don't really have a deadline here. I'll just push it off until tomorrow, and then it never gets done. Here, there's at least a deadline you're working to. Speaking of
yeah.
which, here's the competition schedule. As I mentioned, everything opened on Cookie Connection on February 28th, and I'll put the link to the competition overview underneath this post when it posts online. All of the rules are in the competition overview post. A link to register is also there. The registration link will take you over to Eventbrite, which is my event registration platform. So don't be surprised if it jumps you to another site. I accept the payment fees there, but then you have a good solid 3 months till May 31st to create that entry. So, just plan it out, plan it out. You don't have to do it all in one fell swoop. It shouldn't be pressured. You can take your time doing it. In the process of you creating, I'll be gathering more sponsor money, hopefully adding to that prize pot. May 31st is the submission deadline, 5 p.m. Central Time. That's the time by which all entry materials need to be uploaded to Cookie Connection. And again, you'll gain access to those databases as soon as you register on Eventbrite and pay that $15 fee. We'll begin judging soon thereafter, probably by June 1. Judging will hopefully take 2 weeks. That's typically what it takes. We'd like to spend our time with it and really fairly evaluate every entry. It could take longer depending on how many entries we get. But again, any competition updates will appear on Cookie Connection in the competition area of the blog. And I just conclude with, again, registering early. That gives you access to those databases so you can see exactly what you need to upload. It also helps me with planning to get an early read on the number of people possibly entering. Gives me a sense of how long it's going to take us to judge. It also tells me how long it's going to take me to compile the feedback. So I really appreciate when people do jump in there early, even before they've decided what they're going to create. What else? Anything else to add, Beatrice? I'm kind of talked out, but
No, I think that's just please check out those tips, and ask all the questions. I can answer them too. I'm going to be on the lookout for those questions. And that's about it.
well, thank you so much. It was so good to catch up with you. Just to see your face. And I'm so appreciative not only of your sponsorship, but also the commitment you put into judging, which is pretty extraordinary. Thank you so much. And we will be talking online, I'm sure.
Yeah, thank you so much and have a great day, Julia.
You too. Have a great day, everybody.